And welcome to Module 19 in our Stregoneria 101 course. This week we're going to focus on cleansing and clearing spells. So in this module, we're going to talk about a couple things. Cleansing and clearing is beneficial to maintaining the sacred space of the Strega's home and anywhere that we go in the world. The practice is often one that we neglect more often than not in our daily lives, in our daily practice, and that's because unlike pop culture witchcraft, where you're casting a circle and you're doing these sort of ritual actions at the beginning of any working, the Strega's magical world and magical practice extends throughout their day, and so we really have to bring our attention to that fact because it's easy to overlook this important part of what we do. So this segment's going to be both a review of some of the things we've learned and some of the additional and more advanced ways to ritually clear and cleanse our space and other spaces for magical workings and a better life. Now, when I say more advanced, it just simply means more involved. Really, it's not. There's nothing difficult about the process of cleansing and clearing. Remember, everything that we do as Strege is about shifting the energy. It's about working with and manipulating the energy so that it moves from an imbalanced state to a balanced state. So let's start with something that might make a little bit of us, a few of us, a little uncomfortable. Remember when we talked in an earlier module, I think around module 4 or 5, about Bella and Brianna? How many people who are watching this right now, and I don't need to see a raise of hands, and I'm not going to ask this in the class of anyone to out themselves, but who wakes up every day and opens their windows and sweeps through their home and sweeps everything straight out the front door, saying the Bella and Brianna spell each morning as they open their windows and doors? And who here makes sure that at least once a week, if not twice, they completely clean their kitchen and their kitchen table and their altar? So in most cases, in most of the times that I've talked to people and worked with cousins, younger cousins, and things like that, who were new to our practices, I would get a little bit of a smile when I asked them, did you open your windows and doors and do the Bella and Brianna spell this morning? Because we quite often don't do it every single morning. There are some mornings that the day gets away from us, and then before you know it, it's lunchtime, and before you know it, it's dinner time, and an entire day has gone by that we haven't done that. But that's a really important part of our practice, and it's an ancient part of our practice as well. So one of the ways that ancient practitioners approached cleansing and clearing immediately upon noticing that something was off, maybe they forgot to do the cleansing, maybe they forgot to do the Bella and Brianna, was to turn their shirt or blouse inside out and immediately begin sweeping out the negative or imbalanced energies, just completely cleaning the kitchen and sweeping the house and sweeping everything straight out the door. They would turn their clothing inside out as a way of reminding themselves that things need to be cleaned from the inside out. So before we go a little bit deeper and talk a little bit more about Bella and Brianna, let's remember too that in one of those earlier sessions, we talked about the spirits of your house, the spirits of place. So how is your relationship now that we're on module 19 with your house, Laurie? The practice of making offerings to the spirits with whom you share your home dates back well before the Roman Empire. But in the book Phases in the Religion of Ancient Rome by Cyril Bailey, he talks about noticing some of the practices of the Romans, and he said here it will be most relevant to try and draw a picture of the lar familiaris as he was generally conceived, the house familiar, if you will. He is the guardian of the house, and is looked on as a kindly and benevolent spirit who watches over the fortunes not only of the family, but of the whole household, including the servants from generation to generation. And so in every home, when we start this course, we talk about how, we have to recognize that we're sharing our space with these different spirits, the spirits of the land and the spirits of our home, the spirits of the plants, the spirits of the ancestors. And so many times, by the time we get to this point in the course, it becomes evident that our attention is naturally drawn to the spirits of our ancestors because we're more familiar with them. But it's really important to recognize that our attention has to also come to those with whom we share that space, with whom we might not be that familiar, the genius loci, the house lare. And so that it's really important. And we're going to talk about, a very simple way that you can do that. So one of the images that have been syncretized to represent the house lare so that people don't think you're crazy would be to easily, you could find an image of Saints Cosmas and Damian. Certainly not the image that's on the screen in front of you, but that's an image that I personally find beautiful because Cosmas and Damian are believed to have practiced our ways. They were healers. Supposedly brothers. Some think that they were, that they may not have been blood brothers, but there might have been a different kind of intimacy there. And they are often used, and we see in the Common Era, that images of Cosmas and Damian are used by practitioners to represent the house lare. So you could put a picture of them on a mantle above the fireplace or on a kitchen shelf, an open kitchen shelf or windowsill, and then place a little offering of some coffee or biscotti in front of them every single day as a representation of offering to the spirits of the house, that offering, because the spirits of the house are neutral. You're just inhabiting space with them. And when we are sharing space with anyone, with any spirit, living or physical beings or ancestral beings, when we're sharing space with them, we have to cultivate relationships. And so the relationship is organically neutral. But if you ignore them, or you're rude to them, or you don't even acknowledge that they exist in the first place, there's a greater likelihood that that energy is going to become imbalanced, maybe even hostile. And so quite often I'll hear people say, well, some crazy stuff's been happening in my house, and this happened and that happened. And when these things are happening, I often think, I wonder how much attention those folks are giving to their house lare. And when I say attention, it needs to be cultivating a warm relationship with them, not just placing a little cup of coffee or biscotti, a little offering of water or fruit, because you're afraid of what they're doing in your house. That's not how we cultivate healthy relationships. It's cultivation of a healthy relationship, saying, I'm grateful to be sharing this space with you, and I want our relationship to be good and to be mutually beneficial. And so I make this little gesture as a means of offering you my hospitality. So let's dive in now, excuse me, and talk about clearing and cleansing with smoke. I was going to say too that you can, as another representation, if finding a picture of Cosmas and Damian isn't your thing or isn't something you're very comfortable with, you could very easily do any image of one of the divine mothers, the divine feminine. You can put you could do something as simple as the Romans used to do, which is to have an image of a gecko, which can also represent Bella and Brianna in her more animalistic form. But anything like that just allows you to take a moment. So let's now dive into some of the more traditional ways that our ancestors would use cleansing and clearing rituals or spells. There's an ancient hierarchy of materia magica, the stuff that we work with in our tradition to cleanse with smoke. So we're going to talk about cleansing with smoke first, what pop culture calls smudging. And so in a hierarchy from the strongest materia to the weakest would be resins, particularly dragon's blood, frankincense, copal, and myrrh. And then woods, which should be used sparingly and only if grown locally, preferably even on your own property, and only when we've asked permission before taking some of that wood. Because the essence and the spiritual properties of the wood can be imparted in many other ways without doing damage to the tree itself. And then there are roots, particularly galangal or lojan, calamus root, ginger, and mugwort. And then we have leaves and flowers. So anything from, especially in our tradition, from the salvia family, and we don't use white sage in our tradition at all. We generally would use scarlet sage or woodland sage, salvia divinorum, rue, as well as lavender and rosemary and juniper. And when we do our smoke cleansing, we don't often do it the way that you see Native American traditions do it, where the leaves are bound and you create a smudge stick. What you see on the screen in front of you is the way that I do it, the way my grandmother did it, the way that my cousins do it. Quite often we'll use a shell and put that shell on some sort of a stand so that it's not laying on the table where it can get hot, or on a fireproof plate, maybe in an ashtray. But you use the shell itself to hold the materia that you're going to then burn. You can either do that, as I've said on previous in previous cases, using a little block of charcoal. There are some who like to sprinkle a little bit of camphor over top of that. Camphor is a very powerful spiritual cleansing material. But you know, if you live in a place where fire extinguishers and fire alarms, smoke detectors go off, it's just as easy to take some of this dry materia and to just sort of you know, light it a little bit, so that you get a smudging just like you would with a smudge stick. There are also colors that we use that can be employed with candles. So white and red for clearing and protection. Often in our tradition, you'll see white candles with red ribbons attached to them. I gave you just a you know, simple example in front of you. It doesn't have to be something really extravagant or necessarily something you know, beautiful and ornate. You know, just taking a little bit of, and this is the perfect time of year to you know, to go to craft stores and places like that when they're having, because of the pandemic, having, you know, really terrific sales on things like ribbon, and you know, and even some ribbon like the red ribbon you see here that's sticky on one side so that you can actually affix it to the candle easily. Now, cleansing and clearing work can be done at any time. But in the Strega tradition, cleansing is especially important to perform on the morning leading up to the dark moon. So on the morning leading up to the new moon, our cleansing and clearing work helps us to enhance our intuition, to reduce egocentricity, to release all that's hindering us and remains unseen, and any negative energies that we've attracted into our experience. So it's something that at the very least you want to do once a month on a more intensive basis. And then we're going to talk about some of the easier things that you can do to incorporate this type of spell work in your daily life. And I really encourage you to do some of the things we're about to talk about in the next few minutes, because while simple, these things create a very dramatic shift. And I would really love to hear from you guys as you start to do this and start to notice the energy around you, the heaviness around you, the chaos around you begin to lighten up. So we're going to start with something that is very special to me. And this is actually, I think, the first time that I will ever have shared this formula with anybody, including within my own family. This was something that my Aunt Mary, Zia Maria, would use. She would make it. She would give it to people, but she never told anybody what was in it except for me and one of my cousins. Now, it's possible to wild forage the ingredients that I'm going to share in the next few slides. If you live in a place where that can easily be done, or you have your own farm, or you cultivate these plants. But in the 21st century, many of us prefer to work with pure certified organic oils that can be distilled in advance, either by us or commercially purchased, to ensure the potency and purity of our spell work. And so on the inneralchemy.online website, there is a shop button there, and you can find many of these links to many of these oils. There's a specific company that we work with that provides our students with discounts and things like that, and really has some of the best oils that I've worked with. So you can find these things all there just by going to www.inneralchemy.online and then looking for the shop button. And so Zia Maria's cleansing oil spray was really simple, and it's made with 20 drops of juniper oil, 10 drops of peppermint oil, 2 drops of sandalwood oil, an ounce and a half of spring water, a teaspoon of sea salt, or you could use an ounce and a half of seawater, and then a half an ounce of either vodka or grain alcohol. And you mix this up, put it into a little spray bottle or a little mister, and that can be used to cleanse the area, to cleanse the she'd spray it over the table every morning before setting the table. It can be used when a horrible energy is present in your house, when there's been a chaotic person or an argument. It could be used for everything. And when you're mixing these drops, you simply ask the energies of the plants and the energies of the earth to help you to create a formula that rebalances energy. So there's no spoken spell for this particular work. This is just what we do, just the way that we rebalance using the spirits of the flora. Now, continuing along, one of the things that we could do that's very similar to that and very similar in its formulation is creating a cleansing bath, or what we call a Strega bath or Strega scrub. And so you do that by taking 20 drops of juniper oil, 10 drops of peppermint oil, 2 drops of sandalwood oil, some lavender flowers or rose petals to taste, 20 drops of camellia seed oil. This is different from the spray, from the mist that Zia Maria would make, because the camellia oil will help to replenish some of the oils that the essential oils may dry or have a tendency to dry your skin out when you're using 2 cups of Epsom salts or sea salt. That sea salt can have a tendency to draw some of the moisture out of your skin as it's drawing impurities and toxins out of your skin. So we add 20 drops of camellia seed oil. And what I like to do is to mix all of this up in a bowl like you see there, and then to let it sit for about 15 or 20 minutes before taking a scoop and putting it into the bath. And then you could take the rest of those 2 cups I probably use an entire cup in a bath, but if you don't use, so you could half this really. If you don't use the entire thing, you can put it into an airtight jar, and it'll keep pretty well for about a week or 2 weeks. Now here's another personal favorite of mine, and this was from another family member generations ago that I got this, and it's called Stella Maris Mist. And what you do is you soak pine needles in warm seawater, or you can add 20 drops of pine essential oil to warm seawater. that you have freshly gathered yourself. So you go to the ocean and you gather the seawater on a warm day and put that into a mister bottle. And as you mix everything up, anytime you're about to use the spray, you say, "I'm one with the Eternal Mother, the divine feminine principle that powers the seven seas. Just as any mother clears away obstacles from her children's paths, so too do I affirm that obstacles now dissolve into the clean freshness of the mother's breeze. Calm, clear, and peaceful energy flows into, through, and all around me and those I touch now. I'm grateful to command this powerful energy with grace and ease and release these words to do their good work and return to me abundantly multiplied beyond imagination." And so it is. And yes, those of you who are paying attention, notice that that also follows the same formula, the same alchemical formula that we use in all of our spellcraft. And then the final part of our spell crafting for this week is Strega Cleansing Powder. And this is one that I find very useful to keep with me. I keep it in a small bottle, which I'll show you guys when we do the class, the types of bottles that you can keep this in. And what you're going to want to do, and there is no, this is a very, very old formula. It comes from a very, very old book that was handed down to my family. And there are no amounts, no measurements offered, but you take dried rue, dried basil, dried rosemary, yarrow root, dried violet flowers, and super fine dried sea salt. I've always wondered, I understand the super fine, but you're going to be doing this in a mortar and pestle, so it's going to become super fine anyway. I don't really understand how you would get wet sea salt, but that is exactly, I like to share this exactly as it has been handed down. So you take all of these ingredients and you put them in a mortar and pestle and grind them up. The dried violet flowers and yarrow root and sea salt and rosemary and basil and rue until they become almost like a powder, and then put them into a small jar or bottle. My aunt used to keep it in a little satin or silk, I'm not sure what it was, pouch that she always had in her pocket in her little house coat. And anytime you're in a place that feels off, if you walk into a grocery store and you feel a chill, or you are in a group of people and you feel a chill, you just grab a little pinch of that and sprinkle it in the room. And the belief is that because it's such a fine powder, as you release it, you can release it without people noticing. You're actually energetically bringing about a shift. And again, we're relying on the spirits of the plants themselves, the energy of those plants, to rebalance a place that has become out of balance with nature. And so I've used this a number of times. I've used this in places when I didn't want to go out with a particular group of friends and we went to a bar that felt uncomfortable for me. I would take some out and sprinkle it. I've done it in places when I did not feel like I was really welcome at someone's table. I would go excuse myself to the restroom, open the bottle when I was in the restroom, put a little bit in my hand, and before I sat at the table, I would sprinkle a little bit on my chair and on where my feet would sit at the table. So this is another one of those very old ways that we would use our energy in harmony with the energy of the plant world to create balance. So these, again, might seem like very simple spells. Some of you that were expecting me to jump right into some of the heavier stuff have to understand that if you're not doing the banishing work and you're not doing the cleansing work, then when we get into the heavier stuff and we start talking about removing hexes and we start talking about doing actual hex work, you're setting yourself up for problems because you're opening yourself to problems. And so while the more intensive spells actually come in a separate course outside of the 26 weeks, in the next few weeks, we're going to talk about social justice and dealing with psychic vampires and protecting ourselves from those, and activating our DNA and protecting ourselves from the Maloik, from evil eye, and then setting yourself up so that this becomes a part of your life and a part of so that your craft becomes a part of your abundance and your prosperity and health and in finance and relationships. And these two steps, the banishing and cleansing, are really essential. So again, don't beat yourself up if you're not cleaning your house twice a week. Don't beat yourself up if you're not doing the Bella and Brianna spell every day. But when you notice it, when you notice that you haven't done it, that's usually a good time to consider doing it. Never do the Bella and Brianna cleansing spell at night, by the way. I said that earlier in the class, in I think week 5 or module 5, but I just want to reinforce that we do that cleansing in the morning. Now, these other methods of cleansing can be done 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But Bella and Brianna is specific to the morning. We don't want to sweep things out the door at night, because the energies shift when the sun goes down, and then we're working with lunar energy, and so we wouldn't want to do lunar work, obviously, during the day. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys. I look forward to our class discussion, and we'll talk to you then.